What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me we have some more RPG horror stories. I finally get to upload and record a new batch of videos starting with the year 2025. I don't know about y'all, I don't know how your year's going off so far, but mine is starting off so good. Every single day so far has been absolutely a joy, and you know what? That's my inspiration for the rest of the year, to cherish every single day that I have for this year and try to make it as memorable as possible. Unless I get sick or something, then that's not gonna be that memorable. But either way, with the fourth day of the year, let's get some RPG horror stories for today and see the kind of wonderful things we can look forward to or learn from or probably despair from. RPG horror stories are a bit of a mixed bag, but I'm going into it semi-optimistically, but we will see. PC Struggle Snuggle, not sure how to feel about it. I, for some time now, played with great Game Master. All characters are really realistic, and the world really lives. They allowed every character to shine, and he probably was one of the best Game Masters I played story-wise. So I'm not sure if this place is the right place to post this, because I don't know how to feel about it. My priestess was captured by BBG of the campaign, an evil queen that, for some time, were like the personification of evil. If everyone knows the lore of Warhammer Fantasy 4th edition, it's about Adela of the Thousand Mouths. So at the start of the session, our Game Master apologized to us for what is going to happen today. Since we are losing in battle, I expected some kind of public execution, but after some word battle between me and the Queen, she threw me for one of her captains and a sworn enemy to Struggle Snuggle Reina. I was kind of stunned. I never expected a situation like that. Game Master didn't make any direct descriptions. Okay, this is a lot to unpack here. Okay, basically, at the start of the session, UGM just says, hey, I'm sorry for what's about to happen, without, like, have they talked to you about, like, the different themes and, like, what themes are okay? Do you guys have a session 0? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask. Did you guys have a session 0 about the expectations for the campaign and, like, the different themes that would come up or potential would come up prior to the DM? I'm assuming because the DM apologized and because of you being stunned and shocked, you guys maybe didn't, or you probably didn't talk about the specific theme, this Struggle Snuggle theme. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I'm still not allowed to say this word on YouTube, so I have to use silly little censor words. But from what I'm understanding in the situation and your reaction, you guys didn't talk about it ahead of time, or this wasn't like clear, like, hey, is this kind of theme okay with you guys? Is this a thing that everybody cool with? I'm guessing. Anyway, let's continue. Maybe we'll get some more context for this. Before that, the Queen gave our dwarf a choice to cut his proud warrior arms to make me avoid it if he wasn't able to do it. I don't feel like this scene was out of character or out of place, but my girlfriend, who listened to the session while played, had to leave because she was so disgusted. I said that I don't blame Game Master for what happened, but I need to think about the situation. It's not my trigger or anything. I'm fine with mentions of stuff like that. I, for example, quite like the Fear and Hunger game, but when it was made with a character I'm so connected to, I felt so disgusted and powerless. Kind of need outside perspective. It's one thing to be like okay in general media for the sort of themes as long as they're appropriate and handled in a proper way. I feel like it's because it wasn't handled in the best of ways, or there was never really any like expectations set ahead of time about what could possibly happen in the campaign. I'm gonna take a wild guess that you guys probably didn't have a session 0, or you didn't talk about this specific theme coming up in the campaign at a later point. I don't know. I mean, I guess gritty Warhammer 4th edition is supposed to be, or if this is like a normal standard thing. I'm just gonna assume that every TTRPG is basically kind of the same, and this kind of stuff should probably be talked about and okayed in session 0 between DM and players, so everybody can put out all the expectations of what to expect for the campaign, the do's and don'ts and stuff like that. And I think maybe this is a shocker, not only because it's done to your character that you have a connection to, but just in general. I don't know if the other players felt uncomfortable for it, but you know, I'm gonna be honest, I'll probably feel pretty uncomfortable if it just comes out of nowhere. I feel like this is the kind of topics that should probably be okayed prior to the session in general, as a general possibility. If something like this is a possibility, DM probably should have had a sit down with y'all during session 0, or have like a second or a third. Just set up a session 0 to talk a little bit more about the themes ahead for the campaign and how far it can go. The best thing I can offer as an advice is from this point forward, it's probably best to just get everybody together and talk to the DM about what's cool with the entire party, what the do's and don'ts are. You know, is this something to be expected further? Are you cool with it? Is everybody comfortable with it at the table? And if not, maybe change the severity of punishments or different themes. Talk it out in the open and set general expectations for the campaign so that DM knows what's going on, players know what's going on, and everybody is not surprised by like, oh, this is coming up. Oh, this is a shocker for me because I wasn't expecting this to be happening to my character all of a sudden. You know, set the general standards. If this is a situation that makes you genuinely feel uncomfortable and you don't want to continue playing, definitely don't continue playing. I probably would not want to continue playing if this happened to one of my characters, because not gonna lie, it's the kind of topic that I don't really care to really happen in any of the games that I'm in, and this is definitely not something that me or the other DMs would want to run in our games. So yeah, but you know, to each their own. That's all I can really say. I suggest probably best to talk to your DM and the rest of your group and figure out the expectations for the future. I wish you good luck. I hope things go well. I'm gonna get to the next story for today. Hark, the Herald A-Hole Sing. Let me tell you all a tale of the worst DM I've ever encountered. We'll call her Gojo, since she was the most obnoxious fan of Satoru Gojo I've ever seen. I gotta be honest, maybe I'm not showing my weeb cred much, but I don't know who Satoru Gojo is. Gojo and I first met through a campaign we both played in a few years back. While her being a born-again Christian was an obvious red flag in retrospect, I was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt since she was vocally LGBTQ+ affirming, at least on the surface. A few months after the campaign we put on a definite hiatus, Gojo invited me, the DM of the campaign, and a few other players to play in a game that she was DMing. One that she advertised as a cross between Critical Role and FMA Brotherhood, exploring the horrors of war and imperialism in Exandria following the apogee solstice of Campaign 3. Intrigued, I decided to give it a whirl. Also, all of the players in the game were wonderful both as players and people, so my tendency towards rose-colored glasses was setting in thick. Few sessions in, the campaign began to take a hard left turn into what Gojo claimed was an adaptation of Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight archive series. I didn't know anything about Stormlight at the time, but I knew quite a few friends who loved it, so I thought, why the hell not? I am game. I hope this stuff gets explained at some point because I could look up context for this thing, but honestly I feel like I'd just be putting myself in a mixed bag. I know what Critical Role is, in the general lore of the world, and I definitely know what Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is. Fantastic anime, high key recommend. Never heard of the Stormlight series, so I suppose we'll find out the themes as we go on. It became apparent within the following 5 or so sessions, however, that Gojo wasn't actually adapting Stormlight archive, Critical Role, or FMAB. Instead, she was using the 3 of those as an illusion to legitimize her veritable pantheon of DMPCs. These DMPCs, which she called the Heralds, and presented as equivalent to the Stormlight archive character named the Heralds, thought they were ultimately nothing alike, instantly took over the plot, imprisoning and murdering canon Critical Role protagonists like Pike and Percy, expanding the conquest of the Dwendalian Empire despite the advertised point of the game being to overthrow the Empire, and even possessing some of our PCs and ordering that we help them kill the gods of Exandria. The leader of these DMPCs, whose name and appearance were a clear ripoff of one of the PCs, was outright shown via on-screen flashback to have destroyed entire populations of innocent people multiple times. Oh my god, okay, hold on. There's a lot to unpack already here. Right, so they're using the lore of Critical Role and the universe of Critical Role and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and the Stormlight series to basically kind of upheld their own DMPCs instead of like integrating stuff from, I mean, they are integrating things from those other universes, like they're little basing their setting on Critical Role's Exandria, I guess. I'm putting characters like Pike and Percy in the game, but not as somebody that's actually like a character there, but to imprison them and to sort of like upheld the DMPCs, saying like, look at my DMPCs are so much better than these other characters. Pike and Percy will imprison them. We'll use our own empire to take over this new universe because my DMPCs are so much better. It's one of those things. It's like somebody's taking a fan fiction, but then they're using it to integrate the characters into the lore or the whatever fiction they're trying to write the fan fiction about. But instead, like, but my characters are so much better, so they can stomp all over it. It's almost like an invasive fan fiction. Less of an invasive fan fiction, somebody just putting in their cringe like write in or like a self-insert, but instead it's more like a malignant infection that sort of kind of like dominates whatever is going on there. Like destroy the gods of the universe and imprison all characters and to crapple over them just to make their own characters look so much better and cooler and best as ever. I don't know if there's like a proper wording for what I'm trying to explain, but that's kind of what it is. It's like an infection of a it's a fan fiction infection basically. Meanwhile, Gojo is spending significant amount of session time lore dumping about these heralds' impact on Exandria and lore to the story, among other things. These heralds have somehow invented the concept of goodness, healing, love, freedom, and even things like being transgender. Nobody was able to exhibit any of these traits except through the heralds, despite the fact that pretty much all the characters were some flavor of genderqueer without heralds' involvement. In fact, one PC who was trans-masked was specifically baited into assuming 5 NPCs were women by Gojo, narrating that these NPCs were women, only for Gojo to reveal in the following session, nope, these NPCs are actually trans men hosting the Herald of Passion and Music. This PC was just being transphobic. Okay, that's dude, every single paragraph feels like I need to unpack everything. They are the morality of goodness and good and everything, but also invented being transgender, and then blame a PC for just assuming one way because the DM described the character being, I guess, as a woman, but then start saying, nope, they're actually trans men, and you're being transphobic. This is a trap. This campaign run by Gojo is a trap. Not even like as a gotcha, but just in general. They're trying to trap an audience, not trying to play with players. They're trying to trap an audience to basically show like, hey, look how cool my DMPCs are. They're so amazing and incredible and are the bestest ever because they invented the concept of goodness, healing, and love and freedom. They're literally the epitome of goodness. They invented goodness. They're the bestest ever in every capacity. It's just a gaggle of Mary Sues and Gary Stews. That's all it is. That's all it is. What is this? This is a trap. This is a trap campaign. Just to trap players as your audience. Just to be like, look at, doesn't matter what your character does, you transphobe. Look at how cool my characters are. They're incredible. What is this? What the hell is this? All of Exandrian history's Critical Role depicted it was a lie, all the gods were horrific eldritch entities, and the Herald were responsible for the state of the world as it was. So my theory about it being an affection fanfiction that's like a malignant growth that overrides everything that Critical Role has put on together in the universe of Exandria. Look at that. Instead of being like, they are gods, no, now they're being rewritten as eldritch evil beings, that everything was a lie. Because my DMPCs in my world has to be way better than Exandria. So I'm gonna use Critical Role universe and Exandria and their gods and characters to step all over them just to uplift my DMPCs and my ideas instead. Because writing original material without having to step on other people's fantasy material or whatever they're making is an impossible task, I guess. Could have been an original campaign about your heralds or whatever, but instead no, we have to use the other fantasies like the Critical Role universe as a vehicle to step over that and saying like, look how better my stuff is over Critical Role's universe, which is really strange to do. If your ideas are just that good, you don't need to have your ideas stomp over other ideas just to show which is better, like as a comparison thing. If your ideas carry water by themselves, they carry water by themselves. You don't have to use another universe to step over it or stomp over it or to demean it in some way to just show like, my characters are the bestest ever. Look at this universe. They're so bad and evil, and my characters are gonna stop this evil or whatever. Anyway, let's continue. I'm rambling too much. There's so much to unpack with every single paragraph. It's just this is a lot. In order to successfully save the world from the gods of Exandria, our PCs were going to need to allow the heralds to take full control of their bodies, erasing their identities entirely in the process. If you have your player characters what the hell is this? What the hell am I reading? What the shit am I reading? They have to possess the player characters' bodies, the player characters that players made that now have to be hijacked and taken over by DMPCs. This is no longer a narrative hijacking. This is literally like a literal hijacking of player characters. Your player characters made these characters to play in your world, and now you using a DMPCs to hijack the player characters, ultimately taking the player characters away from their control, leaving players to just be not even players, just a captured audience that watches how you play with their characters like little puppeteering toys and stuff. Instead of them playing as their characters they've written, now they have to be these heralds you came up with. The shit I'm reading. The one who DM'd the first campaign, we'll call them Ashton, decided that their character, the Inventor, would start acting against these heralds, assuming that all this world building had to be an elaborate ruse and that the heralds were being set up as a BBEGs. One another entity that we'll call Homestuck, because he's a walking Homestuck reference, started contacting the Inventor and begging them for help to save the world from the heralds. The Inventor agreed. The very next session, the town the party was in attacked by hordes of horrific demons, abominations, and Gojo made a point of narrating to Ashton, "You, the Inventor, you feel a sick joy at watching these demons slaughter these innocent townspeople." Ashton contacted Gojo privately after the session to know that their character would find this uncharacteristic joy they were feeling to be extremely concerning. Would probably leave the party to ensure they weren't going to endanger any of the other PCs. Gojo replied that she already had a really sad scene planned for the next session. So now the DM is forcing the thoughts and how the character would feel onto the player without the player deciding that for themselves. Or maybe it's some sort of outside forces influencing them or something. I'm assuming this is a punishment for basically being like, yeah, I don't agree with the heralds. They seem like the bad guys of the story. I'm gonna try to see if I can help fight against them. And DM took that personally. I bet you there's gonna be some retribution against Ashton's character, the Inventor. Gonna be massive retribution. For real though, it does seem like in a more realistic sense, if there's just a power that seems like they're the bestest ever and they need to dominate and destroy everybody else, sorry, adjusting a little headphones on me, that maybe they are the bad guys, you know? It's like the meme of, are we the baddies? I think they are the baddies. I think they are the baddies, and players should probably try to fight them, because if they're supposed to be this dominating force of goodness that is too good to a fault, where it's making, you know, taking over the empires and destroying nations and stuff and imprisoning people for the sake of imprisoning them, and doing the whole like gods of the other universe erasure or whatever, then yeah, I feel like they are the baddies. The really sad scene turned out to be the Inventor willfully, read through Gojo's narration, slaughtering innocent children, subsequently being possessed by Homestuck, and telling my character explicitly and forcefully to unalive herself, even though I had said on my consent form at the beginning of the game that self-harm was a veil. Homestuck then revealed that he was an actual freaking Christian. What the? I'm gonna die from laughter and cringe at the same time. Actual Christian God. My question is now, is Christian God gonna be the next BBEG as they're forcing a player character to slaughter innocents? Is that what's gonna be happening? Oh, let's see what all this means even. Even though I had told Gojo explicitly at the beginning of the game that I didn't want to get into real world Christianity at the TTRPG table, having had a bad history with evangelical Christian cults, Gojo did apologize a few hours after the session for the self-harm bit, but only reconned the actual freaking Christian God bit several weeks later. The other players and I all thought at the time that this whole scene, not as the self-harm and Christian God bits, which we knew to be Gojo, was Ashton's idea. It hadn't been. Ashton just hadn't been able to get a word in edgewise, and I was too startled by this blatant breach of boundaries to be able to process it right away. It is a very blatant breach of boundaries. Like, if a player is cool with it and it's part of the story, then, you know, it's whatever, that's fine, because that's what the player agreed in. But if the player didn't agree to this whole thing and it's just being forced this script on them, because that's basically what it is, a script, then clearly they weren't interested in this kind of event anyway, and this is just Gojo trying to force some events to happen for the sake of their own narration story, because Gojo is a great genius of narration and storytelling, and they just know the best thing to do for their player characters instead of asking the actual players themselves, which is, it's embarrassing. It's honestly embarrassing for the DM to do such a thing. But at the same time, throughout this whole story that we're reading, I don't think Gojo is the kind of person that really should be DMing if this is how they're going to be running their game, because they don't want players, they want an audience. And if you want an audience, write a book. Simple as that. Write a book. A few weeks later, after the shock of what is being done to the Inventor without their consent wore off, Ashton went to confront Gojo in DMs and politely tell her not to do that again. Gojo's response boiled down to, well, I did what I had to since the inventor was clearly super anti-Herald, and in a game focused on them being the good guys, it's kinda hard. Ah, see, now we even got a confirmation. This was a punishment and retaliation for choosing not to see the bestest DMPCs ever as anything other than allies, and suddenly, when there's just slightly off the kilter, seeing them as kind of antagonists, we have to punish the player. This is the punishment you get for not seeing my greatest DMPCs being the goodest of the goodest possible, and I'll continue to punish you until you see otherwise. This is the kind of thing that really irks me. DMPCs are a fine tool to use in your campaign, but if they're the entirety that the entire campaign is based around, an entire origin point, and being played like the greatest things ever to exist, and if you decide to go against them, you bad and evil and I'll punish you, if this is your attitude about this sort of thing, Gojo, then maybe you really don't DM. Just don't DM. Do not DM. Please do not ever DM. You're not cut out to be a DM if you think the entire campaign needs to be focused around your precious DMPCs. DMPCs are a tool to uplift the players and like to make the story more interesting for the players to interact with, not your main characters. Stop treating them as main characters. Man, Gojo is a really terrible DM. Man, you know, we might have a contender for the worst DM ever spot, honestly. I mean, Iris have done some really terrible things in the past. If you're wondering, I have a whole playlist on Iris. I'm pretty sure that still exists down there, but either way, I have a whole playlist on Iris, the horrible DM, so if you want to check it out for yourself, you're more than welcome to. There's probably a link on the channel somewhere for it, or just a playlist on the channel. But anyway, let's continue. After Ashton told me all this, with their permission, I gathered all the players together and asked them what they wanted to do, and it turned out that we all had major issues with the campaign, but had each stayed quiet about it because we thought everyone else was okay with what was happening. What I've listed here, if you can believe it, was a highly condensed summary of Gojo's problems. If I elaborate in full, would quite literally be here all day. That said, I won't hear any arguments against any of the other players for not acting on their concern earlier. I was ignored a lot of red flags and being a doormat, and will own up to both these facts, but Gojo is very good at playing off any private expressed individual concerns as not a big deal. So I fully believe that other players were doing the best they could with the information they had. Sorry to cut in between a lot, but not many people really want to rock the boat if they're assuming that, well, everybody else is having a good time and having fun, so I don't want to be the kind of person that would, you know, stop the fun. I even have my own players that have a bit of that concern, that have, you know, they come in with this predisposition of, well, everybody else is having fun, so I don't want to rock the boat and say anything bad, and I have to kind of untrain that for my players to be like, hey, if there is a concern or an issue or something to be fixed, say it out loud. Tell me. I want to try to rectify it. You didn't get a magic item from the other session that you promised, but something came up, tell me, and I'll fix it. You have a problem with your subclass that you're playing, tell me. We'll re-roll it. Figure out what's better. You don't like something about this feature or the way it's worded, tell me. We can figure out a way that make it, you know, more functional, better functional, or find and maybe a different feed that you like, that it fits more your character personality more, or something, anything at all. But it really shows Gojo's colors when they say it's not a big deal, because yeah, of course to them it's not a big deal. There are probably a world-class manipulator that can blow everything off as like, oh, it's not a big deal. Stop assuming it's a big deal, and just gaslight you to think that it really is not a big deal when it really kind of is, because it's ruining the fun for everybody. We end up trying to have a full confrontation with Gojo about this before the next session, throwing a hard line about both the bastardizing PCs without their consent for not liking your DMPCs thing and the real world Christianity thing. She responded by chewing out me specifically for not talking about this with her privately, pressuring everybody else into continuing the session as normal. Then a few days later in DMs telling me that if I didn't want real world religion in this game, it would be better if I just left for my own mental health. Once it is settled, we'll collectively decided to leave the game. That is the right approach to do this. I am so happy y'all didn't stick around for anything more. There's still a little bit more to the post, mostly just edits and little additions about explanation, but I'm gonna let you know right now, regardless of the edits here, we just read them for fun. Gojo is actually absolutely f***ing awful DM, like literally one of the worst that I read about. Probably just as bad as Iris, if you know a little bit more in detail, and you only gave us a bit of a brief description for it, but honestly, yeah, a contender for one of the worst DMs out there. We've seen some of the pretty terrible DMs out there, and honestly, the way that Gojo is handling those situations with not only are they forcing the DMPCs that are bestest ever to be the main protagonists, but also punishing players for choosing not to see them as the bestest ever, or choosing to hijack player characters to instill them with their heralds, I guess, personality or something, or I guess hijacking and taking them over, because clearly they're the bestest ever, the inventors of everything good and kind, and every other fantasy that I'm gonna use to just stomp over and just like steamroll steamroll for the sake of making my characters look better is all bad and evil. Critical role, more like critical fail. I don't know, I can't think of anything right now. They're evil and stuff. Vox machina, more like evil machinations. I know what I'm saying sounds ridiculous, but that's basically what they're doing. They're using other lore to integrate into the game just so they can create the DMPCs that are bestest ever and stomp over everything. Players, lore, universe, everything, whatever. And how dare you try to see the characters as BBGs and nothing but the goodest ever. Now we gotta punish you for it by making you do some evil acts because you went against my favorite DMPCs that are totally the core of this story and not the player characters that unfortunately are a captured audience in a situation. Gojo, go fuck yourself. For real, you're the worst DM, and if anybody sees you DMing, I hope they just slap you upside the head and say stop that. No DMing for you. No, not allowed to anymore. You're banned from DMing. Don't actually slap them, but definitely stop them from DMing 100%. Anyway, two details that I forgot to mention that I should have added. One major red flag that I ignored was that Gojo included among her lordoms the Dwendalian Empire was being ruled by Führer Caleb Widogast. While she denied that she was trying to paint Caleb as a unique salute enjoyer and claimed that she was just basing him off of Führer King Bradley from FMAB, this was still a big warning sign that the CR characters weren't going to be portrayed respectfully, even though I brushed it off at the start because I thought finding out why the hell has canon CR2PC Caleb Widogast turned evil was going to be part of the game. The reason I initially thought to ask her not to include a real world Christianity at the start of the game was because she expressed intent to make my character like a born-again Christian to the heralds, and I wasn't okay with that. She denied that the herald had anything to do with real Christianity, but that turned out to be a blatant lie. Edit 2, I realized Faye something badly, that's my bad. I do not think that being a Christian in of itself is a red flag. Someone advertising themselves as specifically a born-again Christian raised my hackles due to my experience growing up in an evangelical Christian cult whose members often describe themselves as born again. In my experience, Christians present themselves in that way often tend to like the idea of God and Jesus erasing followers, personalities, and replacing them with his own. Hence why I brought that up in the context of what Gojo pulled in his game, but I shouldn't have made the generalization here. Plenty of good Christians exist, and I'm sure that good people would happen to be born again Christians exist too. My apologies. Anyway, Gojo really sucks. Don't ever let them DM. That's the only thing I learned from this story. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales tomorrow. Bye-bye.